Hi everyone and welcome along. So today we're going to paint a gorgeous little flower called the Muscari, but you might know it as the Grape Hyacinth. It looks like a lovely bunch of purple grapes on a stem, and it's a wildflower that grows all over the place this time of year, and it's so fun to paint. So grab your paints and let's get started. Right then, I've got a 6x8 bit of watercolour paper, and we'll do 2 stems, I think. They grow everywhere at the moment. They're lovely little wildflowers, and I used to love them as a child. I used to think they were like sort of fairy bunches of grapes. So I've got 2 stems, and then I'll just sort of add in some slender leaves. They've got that kind of snowdrop daffodil feel when it comes to sort of long slender stems and fairly slender leaves as well. So I'm going to begin by painting in a rather faint green goldy stem, but I am going to get a little bit of Sap Green and a little bit of Payne's Grey just woken up there. I've got a size 2 brush, and beginning with the green gold, and I'm actually going to just send it up or send it down the stem. It's nice and faint, and this is a good example of when a lot of people ask me about how can you rub out your pencil after you've painted over the top of it. Well, you'll see, I can't remember which is, that's the stem. There we go. Whoops, a bit wobbly. Size 2 brush is really good for this thickness of stem. It's not too fine and slender. And then with some of this mix, I'm just going to put in a little dash of it here and there whilst it's still wet. And then we're going to do that on the leaves as well. And whilst we're just in this very basic wash stage, we can just allow everything to sort of overlap, underlap, whatever. It's all very faint, but if I get a little bit more of that colour, just send it through. I quite like sort of sending it through to the tips because it helps you actually see where your leaves are. Lovely. Okay, so we're just going to let that dry and then we'll get on with the flowers. This is drying really nicely, and I love how those blends and bleeds have really turned into each other. Now, just before we start the flowers, what I did want to just show you is the Muscari is actually a project in my first book, New Botanical Painting. And here it is on page 64. And the nice thing is it's a really simple, quick project, and we're going to find that with this. But you're going to find if you have the book, there's a slight variation on the technique, on the colours. I mean, Muscari do come up in different variations of blue and purple, but it reminded me recently I was making hot cross buns, and I found what I thought was the same recipe by Paul Hollywood, known to everyone from the Great British Bake Off. And anyway, it turned out that he had done a hot cross bun recipe years ago, which I'd followed, and then he'd done one more recently where he'd sort of updated some of the quantities, some of the bits and pieces. And I was like, oh no, I don't understand why he could have possibly changed it. And then I realised that everyone in their craft is constantly making discoveries, making changes, and why, like you come up with new ideas and you want to try new things out. So this Muscari has just a few little tweaks and changes to it, but there's nothing to take away from the New Botanical Painting one. They're all very relevant. So I just thought I'd mention that. Anyway, Cobalt Blue Deep, great colour. I'm going to do a slightly more bluey one than I did, quite a pale purpley one on in New Botanical Painting. I'm also going to wake up some French Ultra Marine Blue. Really good for a low light when you're using Cobalt Blue. And a bit of Imperial Purple, because I just want to get my Cobalt Blue just the tiniest bit indigo coloured. Okay, and that's why I always have a large brush on hand, even if I'm not using it for the piece itself, because mixing colours you want a big brush. Now I'm just going to extend the stems just a little, maybe an inch, half an inch, maybe. And I'm going to take a size 0 brush, get it wet before we start. It's a golden rule. And we're going to begin to build up our little bunch of grapes on these flowers. So starting with just quite a dilute amount of colour on the brush, not a huge amount, I am going to paint a little knobble on top. That's my technical term. You notice there's that tiny weeny bit of unpainted space. These little bits of unpainted space are going to be so valuable as we work our way down. So I'm essentially now building almost like how we build up sort of berries on a blackberry or a raspberry, those little knobbles. I'm just painting them sort of clustered around that central stem. You will get some that sort of want to fall off and fall out, but essentially I'm painting these with this sense that they are sort of clustered and cascading down. And it's not a perfect pyramid by any stretch. So that's why I want it to be a slightly uneven shape. I'm not using too much colour. And you can see the Imperial Purple has really come through very nicely. Now, as we go further down and we start to hit the stem that we've painted, the reason I want a bit of stem showing is because when you get towards the bottom of the flowers, they some of these little buds start to sort of pull away from the others. So we're going to have one or two, we can sort of see them individually. Oh, I'm really pleased with that. And then I'm going to take a much smaller brush of 4/10, and I'm going to take my French ultramarine blue, and I'm going to dab in, I've got a big water droplet on there, there we go. I'm going to dab in a little bit of colour, sort of in the gaps, in the shadowy corners at the base. The nice thing is it'll still be just a little bit wet, those ones at the top. And then with some of these ones at the bottom, what I'm also going to do is place in just a little sort of oval of colour just at the bottom, because actually if you look really closely at these little buds, they are all tiny little trumpets like that. How sweet is that? And then with the little ones that we can see just sort of hanging off by themselves, we're going to take a little bit of Sap Green, and I'm actually going to mix it in with some of the blue. I just want to knock it back and give it a bit more of the blue colour. And I am going to paint in just a little stem here and there. We can barely see any of them, but we can see one or two. And then just back with my size 0 brush, just a clean wet brush, I'm just going to sort of, oh, what's that? What is that bit of fluff? Oh, it's back. Oh, clean your brushes, people. There we go. I just wanted to sort of soften in and get a tiny bit of the colour running down the stem. Great, there we go. That's what I wanted. And then what we're going to do is once it's dry, we're going to go back in and do just a last little bit of blue just to define those shapes on the stem. So I've just got that one painted up, and now I'm going to just add in, like I said, just a little bit more definition and detail on some of these. So I'm just using the French ultramarine blue here, and you can see it's just making all the difference, layering it up on the dried buds, sorry. What am I talking about? And I think that's rather nice. So we just need to get this one done, and then we are very nearly there. We just need a little bit of detail on the stems, and what a lovely simple flower. So we're going to finish off with just a little bit of extra depth on the stem. Now this lovely greeny blue colour, just get a little bit more of that in there actually. It's always nice to try and keep your palette sort of limited and use the colours that feature elsewhere in the piece. That always works nicely. So that was just a bit of sap green in with the bluey purple mix, and then we've got just pure sap green as well. Size 0 brush, I think. I am going to sort of begin down at the base. So now I need to decide of these overlaps, which of my leaves sort of overlaps the stem and which the stem comes in front. So I think first off, I'm going to have this leaf coming over the stem, and then for this leaf will come in behind, so we'll see the stem. So I'm going to use the colour to sort of highlight, or low light, but you're low lighting, but you are, as a matter of speech, highlighting where the leaves sit. So you can just see how I'm using it to my advantage. You could always just add some pure Payne's grey in there as well if you really wanted some proper depth, but use it sparingly. I don't want to go too dark and heavy. It is a spring flower after all. So just work your way through, just using it where you feel you want to sort of use it to define which stem and leaf comes in front of one another. And once that's dry, you can very easily rub out your pencil. Now I get so many questions about how you can rub out your pencil when you've painted over the top of it. Well, I have a wonderful video all about that very topic in my Watercolour for Beginners playlist, or if you just type in eraser into the search bar on the channel, you'll also find it. But essentially, it's down to drawing lightly in the first place, and then painting lightly over the top, and knowing to rub it out at an early stage. So for example, I could now go on and paint in loads more detail and depth and all sorts over the top, but I have my stems all painted in, so I sort of knew they were there, so I could rub out the pencil. I could have rubbed out the pencil immediately after painting those stems in the first stage, but I thought I'd keep them in there so you could see how the painting progressed with the pencil. But there we have a very simple and lovely spring flower, which I bet you can find all over the place if you just look. Thanks so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that one. I love painting the wildflowers in particular at this time of year. But don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to the channel. It helps us out so much, and we'll see you again next time. Bye!